It's fun.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everyone for coming. It's great to be here in person, and thank you to folks who are joining us online. And we're going to go around and do introductions. Take the time to just say your name and your affiliation. Then once we've kind of had everybody's names, we'll do a formal quorum check. Because honestly, we're cutting a little close just by visual, so we want to make sure we can see what we have available to us. I'm Andy P., San Luis Obispo City Council.
Christine Mulholland, Environmental at Large.
David Shipping, one more. Environmental at Large. Our list is the Public Community Services District.
Okay, terrific.
And EB, the Public Community Services District.
And
McTeague, City of San Luis Obispo.
Ridgeway, City of San Luis Obispo. Kelly Portner, City of San Luis Obispo.
Hank Riso, San Simeon resident.
Glenn Munch, Social Safety.
thanks, Ron.
Tom Burhan, environmental vulture.
Thank you.
Shirley Gibson, Oceana CSD, and I'm on
Thanks, Shirley.
Dolores Howard, Environmental at Large.
Okay,
Matt Cook, Golden State Water.
okay, terrific. Long meeting, maybe?
Environmental at Large. Rob Morrow with WSC and City of Bismarck Beach.
WSC and for San Miguel.
Dan Heimel with Confluence Engineering Solutions. Here's the
Okay.
Tom Morrow, RCD.
Will Clemens, Oceano CSD.
Jeff Olivera, consultant for San Simeon CSD.
Deborah Logan, Templeton, CSD.
Thank you.
Ray Dienzo, Cambria CSD.
Harold Wright, Public Works Finance.
Jennifer Taylor, Public Works. County of San Luis Obispo. Courtney Howard, Water Resource Division, Public Works County.
Angela Ford, County of San Luis Obispo Public Works.
Brandon Zuniga, County of San Luis Obispo Public Works.
Brendan Clark, County of San Luis Obispo Public Works.
Joey Style, County of San Luis Obispo Public Works.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. And I think I did not announce actually today's date and what it is we're doing here for the official recording. So this is Wednesday, May 4th, and it's a joint meeting for the Water Resources Advisory Committee and the Regional Water Management Group. So in terms of quorum, can I do a hand and hi to folks on the, looks like we have, I don't know if people want to do introductions from there.
We could do that.
So folks, if you're online, if you want to take turns, how many people are, oh, we got 17. I'm not sure we want to introduce everybody. That's gonna be kind of
Put in the chat.
yeah, maybe put in the chat and then we can call them out. Unfortunately, the way that we're set up is that in order to be a voting member today, you need to physically be in this room. So folks online, if you are a member, we're super glad you're here, but you won't be able to vote today. We could talk about doing a remote location in the future, but it would need to be a public location rather than one's residence, unless you want public showing up at your residence. Okay, so can I do a hand count?
Came in, would you mind introducing yourself?
And
Oh, okay.
great, thanks. If you are a voting member today of WRAC in this room, could you please raise your hand? Voting members.
I got 11 from
Yeah.
the sign-ins, so it's including you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't have quorum.
Okay, so no quorum today.
We can continue with the presentations and do the RWMG. Once we do a quorum check for RWMG.
Okay,
So I don't know what we do about the chairperson, vice chairperson,
yeah,
but we could still take comment on annual report and we can do everything else.
okay. Do you want to do a quorum check for RWMG,
Yeah.
or are you
just
set?
Based on, so that we're doing a joint meeting today, so it's something new and different. So I'll be, first off, a little extra frantic than usual, trying to run both meetings. But RWMG, there are some overlaps of members, but there are some members that are different. And I do have my member list here. If afterwards, if with your organization or agency, you want to ask me about that, we can check in after the meeting. But for the RWMG, the quorum is 3. And I see Cambria CSD, Ray, City of San Luis Obispo, which has been traditionally staff, Nick, and Ron Munns for Los Osos, Mario for Napomo, and Aline Dia for Oceano. So that's 5. So we have a quorum for RWMG, and we can continue with that, those items when we get to them.
All right, great. So if anything shifts between now and the end of the meeting in terms of RAC quorum, then we can circle back, but otherwise we'll jump right to item number 5. Is that what you're seeing also?
I think so. I think that's what we do. I did take in a comment about the minutes.
Oh, okay.
But we'll just do them in June.
Okay, great. Does anybody have comments on, since it is an agendized item, if there are corrections, we can take those at this time. We just can't vote to approve them. I'm looking at Christine. Are they okay? Great. Okay, and then chairperson, vice chairperson will need to wait, and you give me another month.
I have a question regarding that.
Okay.
What's your status on council? Will you be on council for another couple of years?
Yeah, so good question. So I am on council until 2024. So
If we want to stick to it again later, when we meet again.
when we meet
you're
again,
still available.
I am still available. Yes.
You're not willing, but available.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Willing also, actually. We've had some conversations, and yes, I'm interested in serving again should I be elected, but we can see what other members are interested in as well.
It's always a big fight for them.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so let's go ahead and review and discuss the proposed San Luis Obispo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District budget and consider actions. So Courtney Howard is going to present the item.
Yes.
Thank
with
you.
some help from my friends.
All right.
A little rusty at this. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. Every year, we present to the Water Resource Advisory Committee the Flood Control District Zone General Budget. So just a little background, the San Luis Obispo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District is a special act district that's separate from the county of San Luis Obispo, but it's the same boundary as the county. And we serve as ex officio staff to that district. I'll call it Flood Control District for short. And the 5 county board of supervisors are the ex officio board for the flood control district. So as staff over the years, we've become very good at which hat it is when we're doing different things, and because it has its own budget. And so that's what I'm here to present today. And that flood control district has an advisory committee to it, and that's you all. So, well, and the RWG through our other venues. So every year we put together a proposed budget, and
Yeah, should be good to go.
so I'll go through what that budget management policy is that the Board of Supervisors has adopted and what we leverage when we prepare every year. Our big priority had been Sigma in our Water Resources Division, but now we're moving up back to our countywide picture, kind of regrouping as we're transitioning that. So I'll get into that a little bit. And then the numbers we can look at. We included a lot of information in the packet, so we'll just kind of see what kind of questions you might have on that. Okay, so in a nutshell, the budget management policy says we need to support activities that do the following. The flood control district is about understanding conditions throughout the county related to water. And that's both water supply and flood management. So if those conditions aren't where we want them to be, where we establish goals to say, okay, where should they be? And then how do we get there? Looking at different opportunities to get there. And then we don't have enough budget to implement everything that we come up with. but we do help to get those solutions started for those communities that do want to implement those solutions. So that's in a nutshell our role in using the budget to achieve those things. And then we can't do everything all at once. So how do we prioritize? Well, we prioritize efforts that are regional in nature, since it is a countywide budget allocation. And then we look at, okay, the financial needs of the flood control district itself. We are kind of the parent fund to different zones of benefit that have been established for various purposes. Maybe you've heard of Zone 11A, which is the flood management in the Oceano area, Zone 3, which operates the Lopez Reservoir, Zone 9, which is San Luis Obispo watershed. So different zones of benefit, again, have been established for certain purposes. And then if there's an issue or we need to help out those zones, that's kind of our second level, make sure the district is solvent. And then what we have left over goes to areas specific studies, like we're doing a study in Adelaide area, for example. There's drainage studies that need to be updated. For the past several years, we've been doing groundwater sustainability planning efforts. So that's kind of an example of that third category. And so we've organized our division into kind of 4 different programs that translate to 4 different working units in our division. We have just kind of overall management, so making sure that we create and follow the budgets every year, facilitating the Water Resource Advisory Committee, some countywide conservation efforts like the mobile lab, irrigation lab, and some outreach and education materials. So that's kind of the management oversight grouping. And then we have our regional program that's doing things like the countywide master water report, the integrated regional water management program on the water side. And then on the flood side, we have a countywide stormwater resources plan. We're working with FEMA. And so you'll hear more of that as we go through some more slides. And then we have our sub-regional unit who's doing the area specific studies like Adelaide I mentioned. They have been doing all of the groundwater sustainability plans. So they're moving on to other unmanaged areas and where do we need to understand more next. And then we have our technical unit. So that's our countywide data collection unit. So we're out there with stream gauges, rain gauges, groundwater level measurements, and collecting and providing and organizing all the data that goes into those studies. So that's how we've kind of organized ourselves to implement the overall programs. So we get 0.5% of the 1% of the countywide tax allocated to the flood control district. And so that comes out to about 3.4 million that we have to work with annually. About 80% of it is labor. So we're real programmatic in nature. So there's a lot of us working and moving forward different elements. And then the other 21% is for hiring consultants to help us advance these planning efforts. So it's kind of how it works out and what we want to work with from an annual perspective. We also have reserves, which is more one-time money. So kind of manage those a little bit differently. So now I'll go into our program priorities. Wanted to highlight some of the accomplishments from this last fiscal year, again, July to June, and then what we're looking forward to next fiscal year and what the budget numbers are based on. Again, taking into account what we've already committed to via contracts and agreements, board of supervisor direction, grants, and a lot of our effort this last fiscal year has been transitioning that groundwater program for the managed basins to a new department. So that's sort of our swim lanes for also how we allocated time. So for our management program priorities, again, it's been quite the project to transition all of our Sustainable Groundwater Management Act or SGMA Act efforts to the new department, our Groundwater Sustainability Department. So we've been slowly working through that. I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. We've had some turnover in our division, so we're kind of rebuilding the team and training on the next efforts. And so we'll continue that going into next fiscal year. And now that SGMA is transitioning off our plate, we have an opportunity to expand our partner and public education efforts. So I'll get into that in a minute here. So a little bit about the transition. I just thought this might be a good opportunity to try to explain a little bit more of the different roles of our division versus the new Groundwater Sustainability Department. So the ones in yellow are the managed basins. So that new department will be overseeing that groundwater management related efforts in those basins. And then our division will continue to, again, understand conditions, look for sustainability goals, look at opportunities to meet those goals, and then asking those communities to want to implement these solutions for all the gray and white areas. So that's our division will continue to do that. And you can't see it up here, but it's in your packet. I tried to create like a graphic, just another way to look at our services in our water resources division and with this flood control district zone general budget. Checking where we're at, where do we understand conditions, where don't we, where do we need to go understand conditions, kind of sets the priorities for what we study next. And then we do those studies with the community, either on a regional basis or an area specific basis. And then once those solutions are identified, we look at how to implement it. So do we form a zone of benefit? Do we do a contract between beneficiaries? In Sigma's case, we asked the board and they said we want to create a new department. And so that's what we've been helping get implemented. And now we're about to circle back and look again, countywide, where do we need to go next? So that's sort of just the cycle we go through with our division. And then just kind of a snapshot of, okay, we just did a plan, and that plan has a lot of things that need to be done to manage a groundwater basin. And so that's kind of just another reflection of, kind of why we hand it off to an implementing entity, because then they have several things to address within that plan, times however many basins. So just trying to kind of explain a little bit of the different roles as we move forward. And that transition is nearing completion. I think overall it's going really well, and our goal is to have the new department up and running by June, and then we're going to be using our budget for the next things, and we'll just be there to help Blaine and his team when needed.
Courtney, is this new division requiring hiring of new people, or are people wearing two hats?
So the board decided to hire one person to oversee a new department. So it's a department of one in the county. And he was tasked with procuring consultants to act as staff to help him implement and coordinate with all the other GSAs. So for now, that's the direction. There's one person in that department that is getting consultants to help.
Question, the yellow versus the gray. You pointed out that you are no longer in the yellow back there. That's where hell is taking place, left, right, and center. And for example, you've got in Los Angeles this issue between the Coastal Commission shutdown on the basis of water and the county saying its general plan says it can issue permits providing there are offsets. So there's already a conflict. Which of these two groups is involved, if at all, in that? Or is the management people, the actual agencies inside Los Angeles, solely responsible for what goes on there? Is there a county involvement at all in either of these two groups that we're talking about, gray and yellow?
Yeah, so there's different hats, right? There's the county of San Francisco has land use authority in that area. And so the land use authority county, but there's also a member of the Superior Judgment, so part of the Basin Management Committee. So, and that's the Groundwater Sustainability Department, this new department I'm talking about. So there's a lot of land use, water management coordination going with those two county hats between the planning department and GSD for short is the Groundwater Sustainability Department. And then there's the Basin Management Committee itself. And so there's a lot of, those are the kind of the entities that have to work together.
So it's sort of yellow.
To things.
Yellow tinge slightly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is just reflects, yeah, there's definitely a lot of other layers to add because there's regional water infrastructure, which is still kind of in the public works realm as a wholesale water supplier. Yeah. So again, working with different potential beneficiaries to identify solutions. So still kind of in that realm. Right, and it's very confusing. Maybe I'm making more confusing by trying to. We'll keep trying. nearing completion. This is our Water Resources Division, again, kind of in the flood control zone general land with that effort. We're still looking for 2 more engineers to help us with these bigger initiatives that we're already working on and starting some new ones, especially with like drainage studies that need to be updated and waterway management plans that need to be updated, for example. So that's our happy team there. I want to point out Joy and Jenny. They're part of what I consider kind of the management, program management side of the house that helps us keep going. And some of those new initiatives that Joy and Jenny will be helping with are some of the things that we're already doing. But like grants tracking, to enhance that, we're hoping to understand better all those opportunities out there so we can match things up to projects and programs. There's a lot of grants, so I'm happy that Joey and Jenny can help us keep track of all those opportunities. Also, what you'll hear about later is the tool we want to do to have a better water information and data system, management system. So envision that group team helping us, keeping that up and running going forward. And then enhance public engagement. What can we do to do storyboards or you leverage social media like YouTube shorts, those kinds of things to really help enhance public education. So those are sort of big ideas, goals that we hope we can start to integrate into our day-to-day work efforts from a program management perspective. From here, I'm going to hand it to Brendan, our regional supervisor.
Thank you. I'll be quick. One of my roles here, in addition to helping staff this committee, is supervising our regional program. And so some of our accomplishments in the last year included kicking off the Master Water Report update. We had an RFP that's closed, and I'll have a little bit more updates about the Master Water Report on the next slide. We are in the middle of our next IRWM grant project selection process, which we'll also hear more about in a little bit. And we've been coordinating with FEMA. FEMA has doing mapping updates across the county, and so that's been a big update as well for us. And we've been working on a study of the East Fork of San Luis Obispo Creek through our Zone 9, our flood control zone of benefit for San Luis Obispo Creek, and that study is just about complete. We still have 2 months, so I can say I think it'll be complete by the end of this fiscal year. So that's my goal. Objectives for the next year include just continuing with the Master Water Report update, getting the application in for our next IRWM grant, doing the public outreach and everything related to the FEMA mapping updates, and really kicking off a vegetative maintenance program in Slow Creek watershed in the county area. So the city has a very established program. We just completed an agreement a few months ago, 6 months ago, with the city and the county to borrow a bit of what the city's been doing so well in their areas and bring it out into the county areas and kind of teach us and show us what to do. It's a pilot program, so I'm going to try to glean and learn from Freddie, if you know Freddie, and as we establish our own program in the coming years. That's the goal there. So some specifics for the Master Water Report update. We had the RFP out in December and January. And earlier in the year, we finalized the $280,000 grant, $280,000 grant we received from the state. And we expect to take the consultant contract to the Board of Supervisors in June. And coming up here in the fiscal year, we'll have a data and analysis audit. So this is going to be internal and external. What do we have available? We have a great start with the 2012 report, but what's happened in the last 10 years? A lot. And we want to make sure we're hearing from everyone, again, internally to the county, but also externally, what's been done and what can we insert and include in our analysis. And that also includes what type of reporting and analysis we're going to generate with the tool as well. We're going to get into alternative selections for how the tool is going to work and what it's going to look like, and begin preliminary development. And we're targeting a WRAC workshop. This will be the public part here in the fall. with WRAC as part of the public outreach for all those three things I just mentioned, the data analysis, alternatives, and things like that, and getting input from all of you, because all of you will benefit from this, and we want to hear from you. I mentioned a little bit the FEMA mapping. So this is something that FEMA has been doing since late 2018, and they're going through their Zone A areas across the country. Zone A are areas FEMA has defined as areas prone to the 100-year flood event, but they've not calculated it. And so they're systematically going through and calculating all these areas that have just kind of, in my opinion, been drawn on the map. And so they're slowly going through that, and they've been doing this in 4 focused areas in our county. And this is the Slow Creek from the city limit, south city limit to Avila, Salinas River north of Paso to the county line, Huerhuero Creek above, through, and below Creston, and Meadow Creek kind of all around the 101 crossing and the upper watershed as well.
Where is that?
Meadow Creek. It's like Pismo, AG, Grover area. So it's the creek that dumps into the lagoon at.
I'm calling from mom. She's in a meeting on her phone.
That's that one. And so what's going to be coming up this year and why I'm sharing it now is FEMA is going to be unveiling the public review maps. And they do all this work and then they say, okay, local agency, you go present it all. And so you'll see some public meetings from us. We'll probably be going to a few of these areas, their advisory councils, and may have a general public meeting as well to talk about the changes in the maps and what it means, what we've done, and what we're planning on doing based on what FEMA has developed.
Just one thing, has FEMA changed its 100-year flood stage from the old one? Because we're getting this new climate with massive storms. Then I presume they're using a new model for flooding.
Yeah, they're changing all the time. So as projects go in or as projects are built, each of those, whether it's a developer or a public agency, submits map changes. So they have been changing. And yes, there are changes proposed, and we'll be going through all of those in the coming months. So I think that's it for me. I'm gonna hand it off to Angela.
All right, so for sub-regional efforts, accomplishments over the past fiscal year have included getting the Slow Basin Groundwater Sustainability Plan adopted and submitted. As Courtney mentioned, the managed basin transition from Public Works over to the new Groundwater Sustainability Department. The Rio Grande Basin GSP and model, we've made progress on that. Continuing Salinas Dam River Basin planning efforts and kicking off the Adelaida Area Task 2 work. So in this upcoming year, a lot of these are carrying over. We're continuing the Salinas Dam efforts, kicking off desal planning efforts, continuing with Adelaida, conducting an Avila flooding mitigation study, and identifying other priority drainage areas. So a little bit more detail on Salinas Dam planning efforts. As most of you know, the Army Corps of Engineers owns the Salinas Dam. They're currently conducting a disposition study to evaluate different alternatives for disposing of the dam or getting the dam off of their books. The district is interested in taking local ownership of the dam in order to help secure and potentially expand the resource. And how do we do that? We see 5 major components right now. The first is water rights. What's the status of the water rights and the permits? What would be needed to modify different users or place of use? Another component is trading opportunities. How much of SLO's permitted water rights may be available for beneficial use by other stakeholders? Could water be moved or traded in order to optimize other available sources? Another component is partners and beneficiaries. Who are the potential stakeholders that could benefit from a project on Salinas and who could help fund it? Could this project help reduce reliance on the Delta or address groundwater or ecosystem issues? A big component will be preliminary engineering. The dam does not meet the federal safety standard, or excuse me, the dam meets the federal safety standards, but it does not meet the state safety standards. So if it transfers from the Army Corps to a local owner, it would need to be retrofitted in order to meet the state's seismic safety standards. So there will be a work effort there to determine the engineering needs and figure out with DSOD what we need to do.
You said the district is interested in taking over ownership of the dam. Is that the GSD or is that a different district?
The flood control district.
Where in that whole planning effort do you take in the history of Salinas Dam and the interest of the people of San Luis Obispo historically regarding the fundamental opposition of expanding the dam because of the upstream issues of needing that water during drought time and the city's two votes during the major drought when there was no water against state water, which you start talking about involving by moving water around there. Where are those historic interests of San Luis Obispo's residents taken into account?
Through all of it. I mean, that the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the timing, but that public outreach, that engagement, there are a lot of agencies involved with this. So between the public and different entities, there will be a lot of coordination and engagement. This is a long project if it goes. So the first step is that feasibility will be a feasibility study, which I'll talk about in a minute, that we'll have to consider a lot of that.
I guess boiling it down to a very concise question that may be part of Christine's question. Is part of the Salinas Dam timeline going to involve renegotiating the live stream agreement?
The live stream agreement will need to be a part of all of this. Whether that changes or how it changes, we don't know. That would be determined as all of this gets flushed
And
out.
that would partly be subject to the environmental review. Where would it be in the sequence? Would it depend on the results of the environmental review? Would it be an alternative analysis? Would there be sort of a draft revised?
I think
Before the environmental review, how do those pieces fit?
so. I'm going to pause for just a sec because I want to make sure that we're not actually debating that project as much as the study of the process. So maybe we
This is
could.
beyond this year's budget, but it's something that's been running in my mind.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think we need to have that involvement, but maybe we can let staff go through the entire presentation. And then if we have questions and discussion about the scope of work that would influence the budget, that's the conversations we need to have. And then as a team, we'll need to also be talking about the when and how WRAC is involved. Is that okay, Eric?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, obviously, there's going to be lots of chances. In upcoming
Right, and I'm
years.
seeing the
I was
next
just wondering, since we have a
slide is gonna
timeline
have,
in front of us, which does go beyond this budget year. I was just asking where the live stream agreement and any possible renegotiation would fit in that timeline.
And the feasibility study phase, so at the very beginning, I'm sure that would have to be a part of it. We can't get far down the road without, I mean, all of that's going to be considered as we're kicking off.
Thank you.
Another component is the cost benefit analysis. So what are the different funding sources? What are the capital costs and the cash flow requirements? And how would the cost, the environmental impacts, the availability and resilience compare with other potential sources? So a project like this, like we're talking about, has a long timeline. This is just an example schedule. There are many unknown variables, and a lot of it is outside of the district's control. There are a lot of entities and different moving pieces in this. So this is just a draft of what a schedule could potentially look like. So the first couple of years would be maybe a startup phase. The Army Corps of Engineers would be wrapping up their disposition study. the district and the city could coordinate on an agreement and conduct a feasibility study to evaluate a lot of these different issues that you're bringing up right now, and would explore funding opportunities. Then the next couple of years would be actually conducting the feasibility analysis. So really get into more of the public outreach, a lot of coordination, again, with the Army Corps of Engineers, the Department of Water Resources, Division of Safety of Dams will be a big player in this. And in this phase, we would be identifying alternatives and analyzing and ranking them, maybe picking a few that look most viable and doing cost benefit analysis and some preliminary engineering. The next phase would be a planning and agreements phase, where we would select an alternative and draft agreements with the different project participants, develop committees, potentially policy or technical committees, develop an EIR, and continue working on funding. The next phase would be the project development phase, and that's where we actually do the design and secure the Division of Safety of Dams approvals. We'd execute agreements with the project partners and work on, if appropriate, transfer ownership and water rights. And then the last phase that would be construction, operation, and maintenance. And leaving Salinas, another project with a long planning horizon is desal. Again, this is kind of a draft of what a schedule could look like. To start, we'll have a desal plan agreement phase. That's where we get direction from the board to proceed. And we'd work with other agencies that want to participate on what we're calling a desal plan. Desal being a clever acronym for desalination, executable, solution, and logistics plan. So that's the desal plan. I can't take credit for it, but it's a pretty awesome acronym. In that phase, we'll develop the scope of work and establish what that engagement process is going to look like. Then the next few years would be the desal plan phase, and that's again getting more into that public engagement. We develop concept alternatives and do analysis on them. We rank and select some preferred projects. Then it would go into the project development agreement phase. So that's where we would actually get commitment from the project partners to pay for and proceed with the project, and we hash out the details necessary to get us to a construction phase. Then the project development phase would include the design, the permitting, operations and distribution plan, the financing plan, all of that. And then lastly, again, on this example schedule, we're looking at 2041 to 2045 timeframe would be the project governance agreements and construction phase. So long timeline on the project, but starting early in order to even meet the 2040, 2045 ending date or construction dates. So now I will hand back to Courtney to discuss the technical program priorities.
Kathy Martin is our lead for our technical unit, along with Joe and Corey. They're out there getting well level measurements. So this month, so I'll just kind of go over what they've accomplished. Another multi-year project is we got a grant to upgrade all of our rain and stream equipment and our telemetry system, so that when it communicates to the website, they don't run into each other. It's going to be a new system where they're kind of timed out, so they don't run into each other. So it's pretty significant effort to go through that, and I have another slide on that. But also working really hard this month to train the new department for the monitoring program in their managed basins. So we're kind of doing it hand in hand this April. Because we'll continue to do the unmanaged areas, and Blaine and his team will continue to do the managed areas. Because there's a lot of decisions now that you go from just a kind of keeping a pulse on conditions to actually managing a basin. It's a lot more intensive, a lot more decisions that need to be made, and contact to be had with the various well level measurement areas. And so that's kind of why we did that. So we're working together on that to get that handed off. Another project of interest is another multi-year project, but in Rio Grande. I don't know if you're familiar with the stream gauge there. A lot of people over the years when they were kids would go and fish from it. It's like a big concrete weir, kind of old style that the USGS put in. It's a fish barrier. So we're working with Creeklands to remove it. They got a grant to remove it. So that would be a positive project going forward that we're working with them on. And then continuing on, once the master water report gets going, the tech unit will also have a role in that in terms of understanding where there are data gaps. So where do we need to put more stream and rank gauges, and while get more volunteers in our groundwater well level measurement program in those unmanaged areas. So that's what they'll be looking at going forward. So just a little more information. There's 45 rain and stream gauges. It's about half and half. We've got some money to do that, and we've got our bids in, but with the shipping and the production line that we've been experiencing, we've had similar slowdowns in that regard too. But I think all the things are in, and they're slowly starting to exchange out all the different sites with the solar panels and antennas and everything else. And then it'll be down, probably be down at a certain time to make the switch. So I guess it's okay to have a drought from that perspective, but hopefully we can accomplish that, because there's a lot to coordinate with our communications towers. So anyway, it's pretty good effort, but then hopefully it'll make it more efficient going forward, because then we'll have the same equipment all over versus the hodgepodge of what we've faced together over the years. So it's pretty exciting. Maybe I'll get started for us. Okay, so that's sort of the big picture of all of the things that we are intending to work on, and we've translated that into all of the dollar amounts that go along with all of those efforts. And I'll introduce Harold Wright from our finance division too, who have helped us put it all into the tables that you'll see in your packet that kind of correspond with the different programs I described. We also have a 5-year plan that helps kind of helps us think ahead to what are those next priorities, and manage our budget over time and our reserves over our savings account over time. So you'll see that in there too. Just another kind of detailed tool that we try to use to manage the budget. I also included a description of the programs in the packet as well that you can read through if you would like, and the budget management policy itself. So you'll find those items in the packet. Basically, we're going through a transition, so it might look a little different if you've followed over the years. It's starting to look a little bit different. We had broken it out into groundwater basins, our budget in the past, but now that we're moving on to more of a one water tracking system where we're looking at water planning areas, so that we can look at the watershed groundwater system as a whole. So you'll see those groupings change, and we have kind of a map that that explains the different water planning areas in there. And you'll see this more as we go through with the master water report and start to develop our reporting tools in line with those water planning areas. So a lot more to come when we go through that project.
In regard to groundwater planning, presumably if Sigma is going to be implemented in each of the impacted basins, they're going to have to look at extraction. What you guys have been doing is looking at water levels, but you've never tried to police extraction. And that's very political, I know that, but you're going to have to do it. And it will seem to me that in cooperation with Sigma groups, that you need to implement a groundwater extraction monitoring thing. I don't know how you do it, but you're going to have to do it to satisfy Sigma anyway. Year 3000 or whenever it comes in. So it seems a good thing now to start getting landowners to put monitoring stuff on their wells that are reporting to the county system that collects data as part of the monitoring system, and not leave it until the very last moment. As we know, every basin is being overdrawn. There's overuse left, right, and center. As soon as we saw that Sigma came in, everyone drilled more wells. You know, every basin's going down. It's a critical situation. It doesn't. I didn't see anywhere anything about monitoring extractions. So I'd like to see something happen there.
And that's what I was going to say too. Thank you.
So maybe that's one of the data gaps for the unmanaged areas that can help us.
That's the main data, yeah. We have no idea what's being withdrawn. And we know that the levels go down, down, down. We've been watching it every year, go down, down, down in the major basins, but we don't know where it's gone. And that's just, it makes absolutely no sense to have any of this program if you don't see and monitor the extractions.
Yeah, the groundwater sustainability department will definitely have a more intensive, with the GSA authorities, be able to, do the metering program, do the extraction program, and then what can we do on our side to start collecting data to understand conditions a little bit better, even though we might not have that particular authority, we're not functioning as and the GSA powers, but we'll ask our volunteers to provide whatever data that they have that they're willing to share, and start adding that to our data and information management system so that we have it going forward. And then we have our reserve. I usually stick it on the 5th year just to kind of keep an eye on, what is that down payment for that next big initiative, or, just to kind of keep an eye on how can we use that to tackle drainage studies in different areas, other areas that we don't understand, groundwater conditions. So over the next fiscal year, we'll probably, through our master water report process and kind of regrouping, get a good list going of what we need to tackle over time. I think that's all I want to say in the big picture. And there's lots of details in there, so we can pull up any of the exhibits, but that kind of gives you a sense of what all the numbers mean in practice.
Great, thank you so much. Really well done. We'll go ahead and take questions and comments simultaneously. If you are on Zoom, just maybe raise your hand and then we can we actually hear them directly if they unmute? Okay,
Yeah, it should
yeah.
work.
So if you have any questions, let me know. Also, Joey, I don't have access to the chat because I came on late. So is there anything in there that needs to be reported out, or is more of introductions that we had asked for? Okay. Okay, awesome. Okay, great. Any questions? Yeah, Tom.
Questions or clarification. You said the GSD at some point under Sigma would have the ability or the authority to monitor extractions, following up on the questions. But we'll call them the white or gray areas, the county or your group would not have that authority because you're not operating under the GSA. Did I understand that correctly?
Right.
Is that, could you get that authority, and is that because of is it an issue of state law that you don't have it, or is that a decision by the county that your group does not have that authority to monitor extractions in the white area?
And the county would have to do an ordinance based on certain findings. I think the Adelaide area is probably our best example of where there's not, it's not subject to Sigma in that area. It's not a defined groundwater basin, but it is a groundwater area that people are concerned about. And the USGS is studying under direction from the board, because there was a lot of people interested in managing that area. But you don't have the GSA authorities, you have the county's police power. But it's a challenging power to implement because of water rights laws in the state. So,
Thank you.
Eric.
Thank you. Item 5 attached with 2 lines 26 and 27. There's earworm grants and then earworm plant implementation. And obviously, this doesn't include the money that is passed through as grants. What's the difference between those 2 lines, and who's going to do it?
we have several grants that are active and one that we're pursuing that is part of the discussion today. So that covers kind of labor involved with administering those grants.
So In other words, asking for the grants is in one of them, and administering existing grants is the other one.
I'd say the IDM grants is the administration of the grants and new grant rounds, like what Brendan is working on with this latest round.
Mhm.
And then IRBM plan implementation is keeping the information in that plan updated.
Thank you. And I do know that there's a boost in the amount for WRAC coordination. I'm glad to see that, especially if we have the greater expensive hybrid meetings and making them work.
Yep, it's 2 staff now. It's Joey and I for every meeting. So,
Excellent. Great, thank
Yeah.
you. I see Patricia Wilmore. Patricia, do you have?
Yeah. Thank you. I just have 3 points I'd like some clarification on. On slide 3, it talks about establishing sustainability goals. And I would assume that those are goals for the gray and white areas that Public Works is responsible for. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
But that those goals would have to align very consistently with the goals of the GSPs, correct?
Right.
Okay, thank you. One more thing, or 2 more things, actually. Is it true to say that there will be no flood control district no, monies used in the groundwater or for the groundwater sustainability department?
So, not directly, but they are a partner. We see ourselves as a regional partner working with everybody. And now we have this new partner, right? The groundwater sustainability department. And so if they want to coordinate with us or have a question or need, we do have like public information, like we have an allocation for this like collaboration, just to make sure we're all on the same page. But if he needed our groundwater tech or our water resources technician to go out and measure the levels in the wells in his area, then we would have to charge his budget for that. So sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I understand.
Yeah.
And then under the desal plan, there was no suggested sites. So you're not looking at any specific preferred areas for desal. It's sort of an open-ended study at this point.
In 2015, we did do a inventory of all the potential sites based on where we have existing desal, where we have existing disturbance that might be good for co-location, and where are there just, undisturbed sites that might also work. So that's as far as we got, and because Dagwood desal got hot, in terms of looking at that, particularly for the South County in that last drought. But then now we're at where we're at with the desal decommissioning. So again, now it's okay. We've got this inventory, including Dagwood desal. Now we've got to go to that next step of ranking and studying and who would benefit,
Okay.
and weighing all those.
Okay, I just want to make one more comment, and that is, as unlikely as it seems that a 1-person department could actually do anything, the fact is that Blaine Reilly, the new director of groundwater sustainability, at least in my experience, is doing an admirable job. And I'm speaking specifically to the Paso Basin plan, of course. But I think it's worth noting that he has done a lot in a short time and is using some consultants at this point as well. And overall, I want to just say that I've been impressed with how it's gone. Thank you.
Right.
I think they just announced the grant award for implementing the plan. So that'll advance the efforts for the extraction and the metering and getting those ordinances and programs going, projects.
Great. Thank you, Patricia. Christine and then Steve Sitton on the line. Go ahead, Christine.
Thank you. On attachment 2, I'm not clear on how some of these numbers are showing. Line 14, line 18 and 19 and 24. They're all showing 0 now. Are these projects that are completed? CASGEM is completed. What about this grant preparation? We're not going to pay for more grant preparations. Is hydraulic data management done? We don't do that anymore. There's no money for that this year proposed. I don't understand all that.
Yeah, so the first three I think you mentioned are all, the reason those are zero now is because we're transitioning from these three categories into one category of water planning areas. So the zeros are not really zeros, they're just allocated to the water planning areas grouping instead, where we're having our monitoring. We're going to start tracking the monitoring costs in each water planning area versus countywide.
So that big 1,000,009 is everything put together for that?
Yeah, plus or minus.
Okay.
And then the grant preparation, we have to go to the board, to get authorization. So we'll probably do it more on case by case rather than
Projection.
yeah.
Thank
But we'll kind of consider that going forward. Sort of like could go either way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, Courtney, I saw some gaps in rain gauge locations, and Mark Batney has some recording stations, various places in the areas where I didn't see any rain gauges. Is that something that you could use? Can we cooperate with Mark Batney on that?
Yeah, we'll include them in our audit phase of the data analysis. Where are all these data sources? And how can we get a hold of them and make them more accessible so everyone can use them for their various purposes?
Great.
And one other question, Courtney, on the you talked a little bit about under the tech program about converting to recording and reporting remotely. Are you going to do that? Are you able to do that on all of the wells that you currently go out and send somebody out to monitor the water levels?
We're not currently looking at it for a groundwater level measurement program. Blaine probably will because of the next level of monitoring that needs to go on with groundwater levels in those areas. But right now, we're still just looking at keeping the pulse April and October in our program for now. So.
Thank you.
Great. Anybody else? Any other questions or comments from members or members of the public? I'd like to say thank you. I think it looks spot on. Some years we say, hey, we need more of this or less of this or whatever. And this feels like this is a work program I'm really excited about. I think that the having these studies, the master water report, I think is going to be really critical. The FEMA mapping, super interesting. I love that there are projects that just happen, like the Arroyo Grande Creek stream gauge, being able to like reset those things, that those just are happening in progress. So, I think we have real questions about the desal and the Salinas Dam, and it looks like there's lots of opportunities for us to understand the issues better and be able to go out and check with our constituents and have those bigger conversations. So we'll kind of fold those in. So those are my general comments. I think that was, if we don't have any other direction, that's, do we need a formal carry on or kind of like, right? I mean, we can't without consensus. But
if I was getting a sense of a problem, that'd be fine.
right, exactly. So by your general sense, it was supportive of the current budget as proposed. I think it's the most that we can do.
Mhm, I think so.
I just have one question on desal, the desal program. As you probably know, Zion is in deep trouble down in the LA basin.
I think we're
Because
sending a contingent down there to keep up on
yeah,
what's
I mean,
going on.
the price of their water is like 4 times MWD water, and they can't find a market for it. So I presume your analysis is not just place, it's also economics and the cost of bringing in power and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, all of those considerations. It was similar to Salinas one, like, compared to other alternatives. And although, in our division, it's all the above. Like, I think we're going to need over the long term all the above. And that's why I'm so excited about the master water report, to be able to create a system where we can communicate that all the above is being, making its way, you know?
Right.
Recycled water, I just can't believe how much progress has been made on that. We only have a few more folks to get out of the ocean, right?
Mhm.
You know, that sort of thing. So really excited about the new platform, the living master water report. Very excited.
Great. All right. Thank you so much.
Just one
Oh,
more
sorry.
comment on that. When we're looking at that, the data gaps that we've had historically since the late 90s of water master planning and all, have always been environmental data gaps. That just haven't been any water slotted into those points. So I'm wondering if we're like spinning our wheels on some of these far out things for the future. I mean, desal, Salinas, when we've had environmental studies before that showed some concerns, and or we know we don't have any environmental information. I wonder if we want to go there first. I mean, I get everybody wants water, but the environment needs water too, and all the critters and flora and fauna and all. And that we have never slotted in there. And it seems almost like that the tail wagging the dog. Maybe we should know that there are environmental needs and at least have something in those blank placeholders in the master water plan, which we've never seen. They've been blank for 20, 30 years now. And we know there's environmental need. And so it almost seems like we're going to go down some roads knowing ahead of time there's a concern and we don't even have any conscious awareness of that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to update that environmental water demand section in the master water report with the in-stream flow studies that have been done. And I think a lot of the science in the Delta, I know we don't like to say water too much, but the environmental science in the Delta can help us too with the whole timing of things, the temperature, water quality, and the voluntary agreements, you know, what was kind of asked of them. Where the Arroyo Grande basin and the Lopez Reservoir is another good local example of where we're trying to understand how do we meet all those needs and operate the reservoir in a way that is sustainable. And, you know, good desal, you know, if, you know, agencies are being asked to contribute more to make the timing right, you know, for environment ecosystem needs, you know, and going forward, we have this changing dynamic of the climate. You know, maybe that's why we need to do some of these other alternatives and relieve the pressure on those watershed systems because of the increasing competition over time. So it's sort of just that whole trade-off analysis is going to be a big part of it.
Great, thanks. All right, we're going to keep going on our agenda. Again, thank you so much for that. We're on to item 6. Receive presentations for the Prop 1 Round 2 IRWM grants.
Yeah, all right.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Brendan.
Andy. All right, the RWMG portion of the meeting. I'm gonna just real quick for everyone, give just a little context for our project selection, and then I'll invite up our applicants one at a time, do a little 2-minute on their projects. But just for context, our integrated regional water management program is governed by a number of documents. And first off, it's a program that was enacted by the state about 20 years ago, and encouraging, you know, any, not just water supply agencies, but any agency or organization with some kind of input or control over water to work together on water solutions. And so from there, in our county is our region. Not all counties are regions, but for us, they are the same. And our region is governed by our MOU. Every agency that wants to participate signs on to the MOU. And this MOU has the definitions for the program and also defines the roles for the program. And from there, we have an IRWM plan, which further defines the roles and sets out the processes and is really an information hub for our whole county. Additionally, one of our governing documents for Prop 1 specifically is a memorandum of agreement we have with our funding area partners, which I'll get into a little bit more in just a second. And then we also have from the state, for every grant opportunity, the state releases specific guidelines and a proposal solicitation package that lay out the eligibility requirements and the specific things they're looking for that particular grant. What are their priorities? What are they scoring on and things like that? So these are all the things that we take into account when we do a call for projects and then how we evaluate the projects. So the funding available for this round, again, we have an agreement with our funding area partners. And one of the things unique about IRWM is that when regions make applications for grants, there's not one state pot that we're all trying to get from. At the state level, legislatively, with these propositions, funds are set aside for specific areas that roughly match like the Central Coast or that match the regional water board areas. So there's 9 or 10 of these funding areas. And so for us, our funding area, there's a specific set aside for the Central Coast, which includes Santa Cruz, Monterey, SLO County, Santa Barbara County, and then kind of bits of other counties in our Central Coast hydrologic area. And so our board approved an agreement and all the other governing boards of the various regions to split up our $40 million from Prop 1. And you can see here, we got about 7.7 million. And through 3 previous grant rounds, we've been awarded 4 million of that 7.7. And so for this last grant round, we have $3.7 million available for a suite of projects. We normally do multiple projects. And of that 3.7 million, about 500,000 has to be for disadvantaged communities, which is a proposition requirement. Real quick, how are projects evaluated? This is also, this is described in the proposal solicitation package and the guidelines from the state. So I've got them listed up here. I've gone through this and our RWMG has gone through this in detail. So I'm not going to explain them out, but they are rooted and found in the specifically what DWR provided. So you can see we have 12 points available. Round 1, there was like 25 points were available. So DWR is kind of constantly shifting and changing how they're evaluating these projects. And then we would do the same. So however DWR is going to evaluate the projects is how we will evaluate the projects as well. That being said, DWR does give the local region flexibility. And so for this grant round, our RWMG, because this is the last funding opportunity, is also going to take into account and has the ability to consider geographical equity and previous awards when it comes to creating a recommendation for a suite of projects. Because right now there's no known future funding for IRWM. So it's possible this could be the last grant round for a while. And lastly, before we start going through everyone who's submitted, what's our process? So this process is laid out in our MOU and our IRWM plan. And that is to review the draft documents at a public meeting, which we've done a few times this year already. Have the call for projects. This is when a set period of time for agencies and organizations to apply for the grant to be considered by the region for our regional application. And so that closed last week. And then part of our process is the project showcase, which is what we're doing here today. And from there, we'll talk more about this process in our next item. But there, from this point on, it will be starting to review, score, and evaluate the proposals, and eventually a selection of a suite of projects to be taken to the board to give Public Works the authority to apply for the grant. And so with that, we have our presentation agenda. So these are 6 agencies who submitted for consideration. And we're going to start with cities of Pismo Beach AG and Grover Beach. And I believe that's Rob.
Right?
Yo, yes, sir.
Would it be okay if each one of us presenting just said whether or not they were a disadvantaged community, because that is required, just so we know if they're applying as a disadvantaged.
Sure, sure. Second, I've got to switch. Oh, you can stay up here, but I'm going to switch files. So.
One question before we start, just on that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you don't foresee further rounds under present conditions. Is it essentially timely for another ballot measure to be placed that would reactivate it? And if so, would it reactivate it under the same criteria unless it specifies otherwise?
Yeah, so when Prop 1 was passed, this was Prop 1 2014, it included a new suite of guidelines and requirements. And that's what triggered our IRWM plan update that we did 2-3 years ago. So it's probable that if there was a new proposition or new legislation, it would necessitate an IRWM plan update before we could then start going for grants.
But it would still be under the auspices of the IWRA.
If that's how the state did it, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, Rob.
Camera here.
No cameras.
All
right. Go ahead and introduce yourself. to me.
They're seeing your slides
No
and
makeup.
not us.
Hi, I'm Rob Morrow with Water Systems Consulting. I'm representing the cities of Pismo Beach, Arroyo Grande, and Grover Beach. Thank you, Brendan. I actually got to leave at 3 today, so I apologize. The bus drops off at 3:15, so I just got to get home for that. We're actually having a design workshop right now, so otherwise some of the folks from the cities would be speaking on their behalf. So we have 2 slides for each of these projects, and so what we're showing right here is kind of tiny, but those little yellow explosions are 2009 when seawater intrusion was detected in Oceano monitoring wells. But stepping back to the 60s, there was seawater intrusion detected in the South San Luis Obispo County area along the coast, and was one of the drivers for Lopez Reservoir being built in the late 60s. We didn't have much issue until we had more pumping happening, more activity, and then again 2009. And one of the key things I wanted to show is those blue bars on the right are the pumping of the Northern City Management Agencies, which is the 3 cities I mentioned, as well as Oceano CSD. And basically those 4 entities reduced pumping by 80% a little over 10 years ago. So you can imagine that groundwater would have been really helpful the last 10 years with the extended droughts we've been through. So what this project is taking wastewater, purifying it basically to bottled water quality, putting it in the ground, waiting a year or so, and then pumping it out, providing it to the customers of each of the 3 cities. There's 2 phases of this project. Phase 1 is taking wastewater from the city of Pismo Beach. Phase 2 includes South San Luis Obispo County Sanitation District, which includes Oceano CSD and Grover Beach and Arroyo Grande. And so the funding we're asking for is focused on the Phase 1 project. The intent is to eventually build the Phase 2 project. So the 3 funders, the project partners of 3 cities I mentioned, we have been working with Oceano, we have been working with South San Luis Obispo County, as well as County Parks and County Public Works and a lot of other folks. So infrastructure-wise, the big piece of infrastructure, this is a $50 million project, is an advanced water purification project, similar to what's been built down in Orange County and other smaller systems across California. So very proven technology, again, bottled water quality with all the public health protection that then comes with it. We're gonna pipe it around along what's Coastal Dunes RV Park, that area, and put it in 5 wells into the ground. Again, a couple of years later, it'll be coming out. Let's see, anything more to say? We're requesting $2 million, but that was before we knew how many people were applying. So obviously we're open to what everyone sees fit for that. And I think that's it.
That's the basics.
All right, cool. Thank you.
All right, up next, we've got Oceano CSD and the Water Resource Reliability Program.
Hello, Will Clemens, General Manager, Oceano CSD. And this is really just a continuation of our Water Resource Reliability Program that was started under the previous General Manager. So that was a grant-funded program, Prop 84 and Prop 1, to develop the program. Part of it was coming up with a capital improvement program to replace outdated, undersized, and leaky water lines throughout Oceano. Oceano is a disadvantaged community. Median household income is $39,000. So according to the State Water Board, we're a severely disadvantaged community. So what we did with a previous round of specific funding for disadvantaged communities was design 12 of those CIP projects. So 12 water line projects have been designed, they're shovel ready, and now we're just waiting for implementation funding. So in round one, we received 274,000, and that implemented 2 of those projects. And now in round 2, we're requesting anywhere from 1 to 7 more of those projects that are shovel ready and can be implemented. We've also requested federal funding through Congressman Carvajal's office for the same projects. So that funding requires a 20% match. So anything that we would receive through Prop 1, the state could serve as that 20% match and leverage that federal funding. So I know there was going to be competition. So what I'm requesting, I designed to be very flexible. These are our 7 projects. Anywhere from the first project, which is $245,000, to all 7, which is just over $1 million. So hopefully we can get 1 to 7 projects funded in this round, and that's our request. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. All right, Morro Bay, indirect model reuse.
Not sure I can stay 4 inches.
No, it's not even on.
All right, Dan Heimel, Confluence Engineering Solutions here representing the city of Morro Bay and its indirect potable reuse project. I have the benefit of going after Rob, who already introduced indirect potable reuse and advanced treatment. But this project has 3 main components. At first, it's a relocation of the city's wastewater plant out of the tsunami inundation of the flood zone or away from the coastline. It's a 1 MGD facility that includes new and innovative technology, being the first full advanced treatment facility incorporating MBR in California. The other component of the project are the lift stations and pipelines to convey that water from the existing wastewater treatment plant to the new water reclamation facility, as well as deliver the advanced purified water back to the Morro Basin for groundwater injection. Big milestone on the conveyance project. They reopened South Bay Boulevard last week. So if you spend time driving back and forth between Morro Bay and Los Osos, you'll be very pleased. And then finally, the actual component of the project that's being proposed for this grant is the IPR facilities. So those include 4 injection wells into the Morro Basin, as well as the conveyance pipeline and other supporting infrastructure. So this project will create a new sustainable water supply for the community of Morro Bay. It can produce up to 825 acre feet per year of water for injection into the Morro Basin. This has multiple benefits. It increases recharge, it prevents seawater intrusion, and it improves water quality. The Morro Basin is degraded from seawater intrusion, but also from nitrate contamination. This will create a local drought-resistant supply that can meet up to 80% of the city's water needs, or approximately 900 acre feet per year, and will allow the city to reduce its reliance on imported Sacramento San Joaquin supplies, as well as provide a resilient local supply available to the city in the event of an infrastructure failure on the state water pipeline. And then finally, this project creates an additional insurance policy for the city. They have local water supply security, which will allow them to free up a portion of their state water supply to other regional or statewide partners as needed. Additionally, the project is leveraging state and federal grant funds.
What's the project cost and the request?
So the project cost was for this component is around $9 million. The project request is around $2 million.
But, as was stated previously, acknowledging there's a lot of need for IRDM funding, cities willing to be flexible on that request.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you, Dan. All right, San Simeon Community Services District.
Good afternoon, members of the RAC and the RWMG. My name is Jeff Oliveira. I'm a consultant for the San Simeon Community Services District. And the project that's being proposed, that we're looking at today, is proposed expansion of the community's water reservoir and the construction of new community water tanks for San Simeon. The project would be located on a approximately 3.6 acre parcel located north of the community on the Hearst Ranch, just north of the terminus of Pico Avenue. The reservoir expansion is consistent with the IRWM plans. Primarily, the project addresses a critical need that was identified when the community updated its water resources master plan, which was identified by CAL FIRE to be a significant fire flow deficit, excuse me, for the community as it relates to community fire protection, as well as rural or rangeland and wildfire protection. The proposed project would include installation of a new tank, approximately 24 feet tall by 68 feet wide, so it's kind of squat to address views from Highway 1. It would store approximately 400,000 gallons on a pad that would include space for a second tank or a phase 2 in the future. The proposed project includes also potable water system pipeline and infrastructure improvements in the community, tying into the existing utility easements that the community has. San Simeon is a disadvantaged community, and the project is consistent with the goals for disadvantaged communities by the IRWM plan. The project has other benefits consistent with the IRWM plan that includes addressing climate change through the provision of safe and potable water, especially for a disadvantaged community. It also provides increased storage capacity that address ecosystem protections. By increased storage, the district can avoid pumping during environmentally sensitive times, specifically during dry periods when seawater intrusion is a concern, and during storm events or the wet season when groundwater pollution is an issue, requiring additional filtering. The proposed increased water storage would address that by allowing the CSD to regulate pumping and avoid those more impactful time periods. And addresses, in general, the provision of water during drought conditions and water historic times of water storage, deficits when water importing is been historically needed. And that concludes our project.
What's the cost and the request?
You know what? I knew you were gonna ask me numbers. It's in the PIF, but I don't have them written down for you.
All right, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 1.7
It was one,
or something million.
yes. I don't think it was 1 1/4. It was one, yeah, that 1.17 sounds right.
Okay, up next is the flood control district. So we've submitted our master water report to as part of the grant application to be considered. And DWR allows for a type of project called a decision support tool. And this is an implementation grant, but they allow for this tools, and it's very open-ended. In the guidelines that DWR has put out, we think that what we've planned for and scoped out for this project is going to fit, because we're not creating a static report, as we've discussed before. And in previous meetings, we're creating a tool that will be updatable. And as urban water management plans change, as projects get built, or as general plans or things like that are changing demand and future projected demand, we're going to be able to insert that into our system and output updated tables, supply, demand projections, and things like that. And so we think this fits right in with a decision support tool, because as we consider desal, as we consider any regional intertie projects, as we consider our state water management tools, opportunities, how are we going to be able to analyze the effects and look at the what-if scenarios? We're going to be able to do that with this master water report. So it truly is a decision support tool. We're going to be able to help the board and LAFCO, our planning department, with the information they need to help decisions be at least made in the most informed environment as possible. And as we've kind of already touched on, we're looking to track water, wastewater, recycled water, and potential projects, with one of our primary analysis being supply and demand, and be able to do snapshots and reports at various scales. So this is countywide picture, but also looking at agency-specific pictures, because as we've discussed a little with Los Osos, county land use is in there. So when we get into building moratoriums versus water service, not giving out water meters, the county has a role there, and we think this tool is going to be vital. And the planning department is begging us for this tool to help make those informed decisions. And so what's the goal and the scope of work? We're going to have project management, stakeholder engagement, our water audit, looking at our management system alternatives, and then developing the actual management system and reporting tools, updating our report, which will be a web-based report, and having an operations model. And so we see this project going on the next 3+ years, could be 4 years. We've already received $280,000 from the state, and we already have some budget set aside previous fiscal years approved for this project, and we'll be going in June. We expect to get the budget adjustment for the rest of the project. And so we are asking for $550,000 from IRWM to support this project. And with that, last but definitely not least, we have San Miguel Community Services District. Heather, right? Yeah. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Freed with WRAC, and I'm here on behalf of San Miguel CSD. In 2020, San Miguel completed a water master plan and identified a range of high priority projects to resolve different deficiencies in their water system. Here, for their water resource reliability projects, we have 3 that are included in our grant application. One of them is to replace existing 3-inch and 4-inch undersized water mains that are located not in the right of way, with 8-inch pipeline to improve pressures and fire flows in the system. Another project is to replace an undersized and poor condition tank with a new 250,000 gallon reservoir to meet storage needs. And then lastly, constructing a new booster pump station to improve inadequate pressures and fire flows within the system. Right now, there's pressures that are less than 20 psi, which is a water quality concern, can introduce contamination. So overall, all these projects have different benefits. The main ones are increased water supply reliability with additional storage, improved fire flow, and then also water quality improvements by improving those really low pressures, as well as the design of the tank will help with some tank turnover and improve water quality that way. And then also San Miguel CSD is a disadvantaged community and entirely. So this will help disadvantaged communities. Yeah. Yes. And so this is actually the project costs. The total project cost for all 3, which is about 4.5 million. I know this is above the total available grant amount. So we're requesting as much as we can for these projects. You know, we can't fund all of them, but if we can get one, that would be great, or you know, 1.5. So the highest priority project would be the booster pump station to improve those system pressures that are below 20 psi, which is about 1.3 million. And then the next would be the new storage tank, which is about 2.6.
All right, thank you very much. All right, that's everyone.
You be taking comments now, please.
Yes, just a second. Where we at? Okay. No, okay, I'll fix that. Yeah, we can do some comments now. Go ahead, Hank.
I'm Hank Creasock. I'm a resident, concerned citizen of San Simeon. Comments are related to the San Simeon CSD grant application for a new water tank. Just a few months ago, in October, the WRAC voted 14-1 to remove this project from Prop 1, Round 1 grant funding. The one vote in favor was from quote unquote general manager of San Simeon CSD, Charles Grace. Apparently is not elected to attend this time. Subsequently, in November, the Board of Supervisors removed the grant from Prop 1 funding. Nothing has changed for this project. The general manager and our board chair placed this project on hold in January of 2021, over a year ago. No work has been done on this project since January of 2021. The project still lacks an easement from Hearst Corporation to place the tank on their property. It lacks permits. Additional funding arrangements have not been made, and the engineering company has canceled its contract. Again, the work stopped in January of 2021. Further, according to our district's policies, quote unquote general manager was required to bring this grant application before our board. He has failed to do that, yet here they are again. I've wanted this water tank for our community for years, and I have picked out the location for the tank. Sadly, in my entire professional career, I've never seen a project as badly managed as this one. Yet the same management and consultant are here, having done nothing but expecting your approval now. It is disgraceful. As a resident of San Simeon, I apologize to the WRAC and the RWMG for taking the time on this project that is still not ready. Not anywhere near shovel ready. Thank you.
Any other comments? We could do online. Do we have any hands raised for those online?
Any online comments? I'm not seeing any.
See them in the chat. No, it's raised.
Okay, cool. Then we will, I want to thank everyone who applied and was here today to present their projects. Hope everyone here attending found that interesting, what's going on and different problems we're all trying to solve. And so I think with that, we'll move on to the next item.
Right, which
So-
is still yours in
Yep.
terms of the working group. So item 7, consider selection of members for the RWMG working group.
Great. All right, so I don't have a ton to say about this one. This is another RWMG item. So I mentioned in our process, the project review and selection process, it kind of flows up. And again, this is defined in our plan if you want to see in more detail, but it starts with what we call a working group, which is a subset of the RWMG. And then the working group will create a recommendation or a list of options to be considered by the greater RWMG as a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, which also flows through the WRAC for also for the WRAC to recommend to the board as well, that these are the projects at these grant amounts that we want to apply for our region. And so part of that is there's not a standing working group. A different working group is created, spun off each time we have this grant process. And so our item today is to identify hopefully the members of that group and to have the RWMG say, yes, this is our group. And then we can move forward with scoring. A few just process things here is the final documents from the state have not been released yet, which is normal. This is what happened last time. We selected the working group, the final documents came out later, and we made sure that there were no significant changes and we moved forward. So the same thing will be done here. I'd like to try to get this working group selected now so we could start looking at the projects. And then if there are significant changes with the final documents, we would have an RWMG meeting to talk about what those changes are and make any adjustments if we need to. And then the other note would be, I have a note here about attachment 7 of the application. DWR wants to see that those who have submitted projects are not a part of the selection and the scoring process at the local level. So those who have submitted projects may not be on this working group. So I'm looking for volunteers who are RWMG members but did not submit projects. And so I will kick it off. I got an email from Jeff English of the San Miguelito Mutual Water Company, and he volunteered to be on the committee. So when we get to a motion for the creation of the working group, Jeff English wanted to be considered by the RWMG. And so I guess first I could do if there's any questions about the working group, I could do those first. And then if there are any volunteers for that group from our RWMG, we could start from that. So if we have any questions about this part of the process.
Which thing you need engineers?
What's that?
You need engineers for this. I mean, all those projects got pipes, tanks and things like that.
Yeah.
So
the evaluation doesn't, I would say the evaluation doesn't need necessarily that background because what's been submitted, I didn't really talk about everything that had been submitted. I know we just heard these couple slides from each project, but there's been a 15-page form that's been filled out by every applying organization or agency, goes through the details of the project and the benefits and there's one entry box in this form for each of the scoring criteria. And so it's time consuming, but it is more straightforward to evaluate the projects under the criteria that the state has provided. Yes.
So we had a public comment about the project in San Simeon and some concern about the management. Does the county, how does the county respond to kind of interfacing with that concern and then the applicant itself?
Yeah. So my response to that would be, we're going to see how the project evaluation flushes out, and we would go from there. So we'll have to do, because we can't really insert. There's no place for the county to or the district to insert ourselves into this unless it was clear a project was ineligible. So if a project was clearly ineligible, we could remove them from the list, but I don't think that's the case here. So
is there an opportunity for such public comments to come to the grant working group once that has been established while they are evaluating the projects?
Yes.
So there will be opportunities.
Yes.
This will be heard by them during their decision making.
Yeah, I would take comments on behalf of the committee to provide to the working group for that. The working group meeting will be a public meeting. There will be some ground rules because of the content of the meeting, but it's going to be a public meeting. So that'll be announced through the IRWM mailing lists and things like that. So. Oh, yes, sir.
So Brandon, and then you said it comes back to the RWMG for their recommendation.
Correct.
So there's a public opportunity.
Yeah.
Does it come back to the WRAC?
It does.
There's public opportunity.
Correct.
And does it go to the Board of Supervisors? So there's 3 more opportunities.
Yeah. Yep.
Did did you?
Yeah, I was just going to support Jeff English. So Jeff English also serves on the Templeton Community Service District's board. And he's in the past has worked for the city of Atascadero. And it currently is working for Avila in the water district there. So he is a perfect candidate to serve as part of this working group. So I just wanted to give my endorsement.
Yeah, none of the agencies he's connected with submitted either. So yeah, I think he was definitely willing to be a part of that. Thanks, Deborah. Cool. Yes, sir.
How do you select the members of this working group?
So the RWMG members would volunteer, and then we would have a motion, and that's what we would do. We're a little bit more of an informal committee than.
RMG group that's present today?
Yes,
You said there were 3 or 5.
there's 5.
5. So those 5 people do the selection.
They could volunteer. I'm not going to force them. I'm not going to force them. I might ask Mario to volunteer, given his history with the committee and understanding of how it works. But
I also see that, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in,
Yeah.
but I see Willie has a hand up also.
Okay.
Hey, Brenda, Willie Cunha with the Shandon San Juan. You've mentioned that we may be coming to the end of IRWM. Now, our previous list of projects that haven't been implemented, that still exists, right? You know, like our stormwater capture potential project out here.
yes, that's a separate list.
Right. And other projects could come into that list. So even if IRWM funding fades, other grant opportunities from the State Water Quality Control Board or other agencies often request or demand that our project is on the local IRWM list. I wanted to make sure that was cooking.
Yes.
If you need a warm body, I could volunteer my sawdust-filled brain.
Okay, I'm going to take that as a volunteer. Thanks, Willie.
You're welcome.
All right. Any
Are you
other-
in?
Can we,
Okay.
right, other
Oh,
volunteers?
I got Nick and
Nick.
Ron too. Excellent.
Woo, all right.
All right.
Sounds like you got a group.
Okay, so just to check, Ray, you're good? Okay. I'm just going off who's here now. So, and then Oceano can't volunteer. So that makes up people who are here. Any RWMG members online who would want to volunteer?
I'm not seeing anyone else.
Okay. And then we'll just ask for a motion to form the working group for Prop 1 Round 2, and we'll go from there.
So this is Willie Cunha, so moved.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Ron seconds.
Oh, Willie can't. Willie can't.
Oh,
make a
that's right.
motion.
That's right. Sorry.
Sorry, Willie.
My bad.
I'll second the motion.
All right.
So it's got-
Ron moved and.
Unfortunate. So
For our WMG does have a quorum, so they're conducting
Yeah.
their formal business.
Yeah, so Brendan.
Oh, sorry,
explain-
Willie. Yeah. So you have to be in person to count. So
Oh.
yeah, I know it's
That's a bit weird.
that's
Volunteer,
the
though.
yeah. You can
Yeah.
volunteer. You just can't. You're not gonna be able to vote. Okay, so we got Ron and Mario. Thank you. And so
Voice vote.
yeah, Ron and Mario. And any comments? Okay. We'll just do a voice vote of our 5. So it's Cambria, City of Slow, Los Osos, Napomo, and Oceano. All in favor, say aye. Okay, opposed, nay? Okay, so we will go ahead with that. So thank you.
All right.
And I would just add last
Yeah.
comment. Anyone from the RAC interested in following along this process, we will probably not be joint meetings moving forward. If you're interested, you can reach out to me and to get on our mailing list to find out when those meetings are and all of those next steps. And that's it from there.
Great. All right. So we're moving towards the finish line here. And I will say as a bonus for those who were able to show up in person. We do have cookies and brownies and some drinks in the next room. So do please stay. And if we're going to be in person, let's have a little bit of a social time. And if you want to nerd out on water issues or just talk about your travels or family or whatever. Okay, so the next item is consider submitting the 2021 annual report to the County Board of Supervisors. This is in our bylaws. Brendan drafted one. Does it actually need formal approval? If so, we have to wait till June. Or can I just, it's signed by me anyway. I think I can just do it, right?
I don't have the bylaws in front of
Okay,
me,
so are there any comments on it? And I'll take them into consideration. We'll check the bylaws and either I'll just submit it or we'll put it off till June. Christine?
Yes, thank you. On actually the third paragraph on the front of the letter, second line, with the onset of another drought in 2021, I've become increasingly concerned about calling this year a drought and last year's not a drought. When do we have drought? When we don't have drought? For 30 years, we've had a 6-year drought. We had a 7-year drought. There's 4-year droughts. This is like the 3rd year we're in a drought now. And I think we should really start to consider our language that drought is not an anomaly in California. If we're not in drought now, there's going to be another drought and it won't be that long. And right now we know with climate change, and more information, we're probably in 100 or 1,000-year drought with a few good years here and there. And I think we need to start considering that kind of language and understanding. This doesn't satisfy me that the onset of a drought was last year.
I suggest a language change. Given the preponderance of drought conditions that has become commonplace, common, and use those words to replace with the onset of another drought in 2021. With the preponderance of drought conditions that have become commonplace. Common.
All right, thank you.
I like that. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, that bothered me too. I'm glad you brought it up because I wasn't going to bother anyone with it, but you're right, it bothered me and we can fix it.
Yeah, I'm good at bothering people.
All right, awesome. Any other comments?
Otherwise, I think it was well done.
Anyone online? Thank you. Thank Brenda. All right, great. Let's carry on here. Any comments for the ongoing update? Obviously, a lot of material in there, but does anybody have any comments on item 9? Seeing none. Future agenda items is we have so the irony, of course. So item 10 is future agenda items, and we have a meeting in June. We're going to do the same hybrid. Ironically, the title of the subject matter is drought-related topics. So now it will be preponderance of drought conditions. That, and then we take a break in July and August. I kind of put big circles around some of our areas of interest in the future about desal and the Salinas Dam and some other ones. Eric.
Just a question. I haven't heard anything for some time about the Nacimiento and San Antonio Lake Tunnel project. Is it still progressing quietly somewhere, or is it something to take off?
I don't actually know about that
Yeah,
one.
my understanding is in the permit phase with State Water Board, so that we can ping our utilities.
Yeah, we can bring an
There
update.
is something happening, then probably we should agendize it maybe in the fall or whatever, just to catch us up on. Because it's obviously something the media doesn't cover, and it's something most people in this county at present are not talking about. There's so much else to talk about, but it could be quite a substantive issue affecting us.
Great, thank you. So that's the Nasi San Antonio Lake Tunnel project. Okay.
I also might have an update on state water. And I want to amend what I said. State water is very important to our water portfolio here in the county. I know there's sensitive issues around it, but the years 3 and 4 funding for the Delta conveyance planning phase. Probably just kind of have an update on that because the subcontractors are going to consider that and then the board. So that is another item.
Okay, for the June meeting. Okay, great, thank you.
I've got one for you, one for us, and that is to ask for the single basic people to come over and tell them what their plans are for extraction monitoring.
Wonder how many would accept that invitation.
It works in progress. All right.
No time to start like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's a good question. All right, anything else on future agenda? All right, and now is our opportunity for public comment for items not on the agenda. This is for board members or the public. Yeah, Ed.
This is particular focus to David, who always wants to know about the Dana Reserve project in the Como. There are at least 7 events coming up that are key events in the process of annexation. Those are all listed in the NCSC website and this last meeting agenda on the general manager's report. These are the EIR release, the planning commission study session, which is going to be on June 9th, LAFCO study session, June 16th. EIR public comment will start 20 and so forth. So if you go to the NCSC website, look at our last meeting agenda package under the general manager's report, all those dates are down there. And you might want to put in some of those study sessions.
Great, thank you.
That's very good to know. So that's, thank you for showing the go-to place to find that all in one place.
Great, thank you.
Not
Any
all
other?
of it shows up on the county planning website. I'm glad to know the NCSD is keeping track.
Great. Any other public comments? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and adjourn to our snacks and socializing. Our next meeting will be at June 1st, 1:30 p.m. here in council chambers. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Break.